This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
This is The World Today, 15 minutes of the latest news from around the world. I am Peninah Karibe, coming up in this hour. Hong Kong voters are electing lawmakers for the first time since a major reform. The death toll from Typhoon Rai climbs as it moves out of the Philippines. And Europe is quickly moving to tighten restrictions as Omicron spreads. A legislative council election is underway in Hong Kong. It's the first such election after the improvement of the electoral system in the special administrative region under the principle of patriots administering Hong Kong. Polling stations opened at 8:30 this morning. Yang Chengshi reports.
We've already seen lines forming in front of the polling station, voters coming in to vote. Now, the voting is expected to be wrapped up at 10:30 p.m. this evening. Voters will come out to over 600 polling stations across the city to cast their vote. And the voting for the election committee constituencies will take place at the Hong Kong Convention and Exhibition Center in Wan Chai. Now, the city's anti-corruption agency, the ICAC, has dispatched over 800 officers across polling stations to make sure that this is a clean election. Now, the government has provided free public transportation from subway to tram cars to buses to encourage more voters to come out and vote on Sunday. Now, the voting for the geographical constituencies will be done by digital voting this time. So according to election officials, the results are expected to be out earlier than previous editions of elections. Now, according to election officials, the results for these geographical constituencies will be out on Monday morning, early Monday morning. Now, the results for the election committee constituencies should be out about 3 to 4 hours after polling closes at 10:30 p.m. And the votes for the functional constituencies might take the longest to count, and it should be out by noon on Monday.
Authorities have set up 3 polling stations at Hong Kong's border with Shenzhen in Guangdong province. A special closed-loop system allows mainland-based Hong Kong people to vote despite COVID travel restrictions.
It is our civic duty to vote for who will be the public servants in Hong Kong. First of all, they must love China. If Hong Kong's legislators do not stand on China's position but oppose the country, they can't work in the Legislative Council and receive a salary from the Hong Kong government. For a long time, I've viewed such behavior with contempt.
I think the most important thing is stability and prosperity. We know that bad things happened in 2018 and 2019. The social unrest and the COVID-19 pandemic is still going on in Hong Kong. I think we still need all social forces for prosperity and stability. However, the most basic principle is that only those who love Hong Kong and love their country should govern the region. For me, I need to express my will by casting a vote.
Former Chief Executive of Hong Kong, Leung Chun-ying, has praised the region's improved electoral system. He said it cuts off those who want to harm Hong Kong.
We can remember that some legislators from the Legislative Council elected under the past electoral system often carried banners and rushed towards the rostrum. They had refused to fulfil their responsibilities as legislators of the Legislative Council of Hong Kong. They overstepped the government's power and even acted against Hong Kong and the nation, and were willingly utilised by some Western countries. Now we have the first election for the Legislative Council since the improvement to the electoral system. The significance of us standing out to vote is not only electing those with virtue and capabilities, but it's also saying no to the past electoral system for the Legislative Council that halted and wasted the time of Hong Kong and some legislators elected under the system.
Out of the 90 seats in Hong Kong LegCo, 20 are directly elected. 40 seats are decided by the Electoral Affairs Commission and 30 others are from the professional subsectors. SAR Chief Executive Carrie Lam said this composition would introduce various voices to the region's legislature.
What we've seen in the campaigns is that the 153 candidates are from a wide range of backgrounds in terms of their ages, professions, fields, and political positions. This is consistent with the demand of our electoral system that not all lawmakers share a same value and same stance. So it seems that there will be many different voices in the Legislative Council. It doesn't matter. Our administration is willing to listen to different opinions, because our goal is to do a good job in municipal affairs and perform real deeds for the people of Hong Kong.
At least 75 people have been killed in the strongest typhoon to hit the Philippines this year. The number has jumped from the previously reported 31. Typhoon Rai smashed into the southern and central parts of the country Thursday. It forced over 300,000 people from their homes and beachfront resorts. The death toll is expected to rise. The island province of Bohol is among the hardest hit, and its governor said they have only reached out to fewer than half of the mayors. Cleanup and reconstruction are underway. Britain has reported a surge in Omicron cases as London's mayor declares a major incident to help the city's hospitals cope. The number of Omicron cases recorded across the country hit almost 25,000 on Friday. That's more than 10,000 cases from a day earlier. Health officials warn these could be just the tip of the iceberg. Britain has been added to Germany's list of high-risk countries with tighter travel restrictions. France has cancelled the traditional New Year fireworks in Paris amid growing concerns over Omicron. Nearly 60,000 new cases were reported on Saturday. The country's health minister says Omicron accounts for up to 10% of new confirmed cases, and the Netherlands will go into lockdown over the Christmas period to try and stop an Omicron surge. Michael Vos reports from London.
The first all-night vaccination centres have opened in England. With a record 93,000 new daily cases, the rush is on to contain the highly contagious new Omicron variant. Almost half the population, though, have now had their third jab. Hospitals are reporting a rise in the number of patients in intensive care, some of who have been double vaccinated.
I don't think it's going to happen. I've been double jabbed as well. May and July I was jabbed. And I did say if I hadn't been vaccinated, I probably wouldn't be here.
Doctors at this hospital fear it's going to get much worse.
So all of the meetings that we've attended insofar as the network is concerned, where modelling is taking place, the message is clear that this looks like it's the calm before the storm.
There are reports the UK government is considering a short 2-week circuit breaker lockdown, though this could face stiff opposition from many in the ruling Conservative Party. There were long queues at the Eurostar railway station in London on Friday night as passengers tried to take the train to France before it closed its borders to people travelling from Britain. France is also seeing a surge in COVID cases, leaving its hospitals under pressure.
The Mulhouse Hospital ICU is currently at full capacity, as patients have been coming in for the last 20 days. 70% of the ICU patients are COVID-positive cases.
France has reopened large venues such as this velodrome for mass vaccinations and is now offering them to 5-year-olds. Germany has also started vaccinating everyone over the age of 5. The fear is that the situation is going to get much worse.
I too expect a massive fifth wave. I'm in close contact with my colleagues in England, both politically and scientifically. They say that what we are seeing there exceeds everything we have seen during the entire pandemic so far.
Back in Britain, the economy is starting to suffer with mounting pressure on the government to renew financial assistance to hospitality and other sectors.
In Spain, hundreds of demonstrators have gathered in Barcelona and Bilbao to protest against COVID-19 health passes that are now required to enter bars, restaurants and gyms. With a nationwide vaccination rate of nearly 80%, Spain had been largely spared the latest wave sweeping Europe, a wave which has pushed countries like Germany to reintroduce tough restrictions on travel and socializing. Spain's infection rate has more than doubled since the beginning of the month. The country has recorded more than 5.4 million cases and over 88,000 deaths since the pandemic began. The Chinese mainland has reported 44 new locally transmitted COVID cases. 31 were in the eastern province of Zhejiang, mostly in the city of Shaoxing. 10 were reported in Shanxi and 3 in the southern province of Guangdong. 39 imported cases were also reported. Aid agencies are calling for more support from international donors to try and mitigate the devastation brought about by flooding in parts of South Sudan. In areas around Bentiu town in the north of the country, authorities say relentless flooding has left more than 90% of the population of the entire state homeless and their livelihoods washed away. CGTN's Patrick Oyet reports from Bentiu.
More people keep arriving in Bentiu town from villages overrun by floods. Their homes have been washed away. Crops are underwater and food is scarce here. Livestock have died in the floods. The few domestic animals that have survived are dying because of lack of what to eat. Aid agencies say they are overwhelmed and are asking for more support from international donors. The entire population of Unity State in the northern part of South Sudan now depends on food aid. Women, the elderly, and children are the most affected.
We are suffering. We have nothing now. We used to have farms in this place. We used to have enough food, but we are now surrounded by water. We only have little goods coming here by canoes.
Schools are also flooded. Children are now studying under a few trees that have not yet been submerged by water.
I hope that children have to continue with their study regardless of the situation that they are in. Even though if they are in the middle of this crisis, children have to go to school. They have to have access to continue with their learning. Whether they are in middle of the water or the crisis, they have to continue with their study.
The UN says more than 2 million people may not have access to basic health services. 200,000 women and children already acutely malnourished will be at further risk. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Bentiu, South Sudan.
And that's it for this edition of The World Today. I'll be back shortly with more news from around the continent on Africa Live. Thanks for watching.
So this is it. I'm just about to be shot.
Tents here, bottles are being thrown as they do so.
There are about 3 critical bridges here in Malawi. That's one of them. We're going to cross that bridge.
As you can see behind me, police forces
who are replying with gas. Gas just came in.
Tear gas, so it's all begun now.
Divisions leading the charge into West Mosul have brought us here.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots.
This is where most of the fighting has been concentrated.
This is the front line now after 9 days of fighting.
We're about 2 to 3 kilometers from
within
the front
clear
line.
view of this front line position.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Uganda sets tougher rules for travelers as COVID cases rise. UK reports surge in Omicron cases as health officials warn of bigger wave. And Ethiopia rejects UN probe of possible war crimes in the north of the country. This is Africa Live. A warm welcome to the show. I am Peninah Karibe. Also coming up, relatives of Ethiopian Airlines 737 MAX crash victims want Boeing executives prosecuted. And African champions Algeria beat Tunisia 2-0 in the FIFA Arab Cup final in Qatar to claim top honors. Ugandan authorities have announced that mandatory testing will be conducted via land border points. The targeted borders are those with Kenya, South Sudan, Tanzania, the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda. Officials say the decision is stemming from the need to check a rise in infections caused by variants of Omicron imported from neighboring countries. The cases were detected among travelers who arrived through the Entebbe International Airport. Previously, arrivals via land borders were only required to show a valid negative PCR certificate from an accredited lab. So far, 25 cases of the Omicron variant have been reported in Uganda. Meanwhile, Kenya says its COVID-19 positivity rate is at 23% amid ongoing community transmission of the Omicron strain. Kenyans have been urged to get vaccinated and continue to observe prevention guidelines. Many Congolese citizens are looking forward to celebrating Christmas with family and friends this year following the government's easing of coronavirus restrictions. Last year, the government banned large gatherings and ordered the closure of bars and nightclubs to prevent the spread of COVID-19. But a drop in infections has led to the easing of restrictions. CGTN's Chris Chamringa sent this report from Kinshasa.
It's that time of the year that the DRC capital Kinshasa sparkles and shines. The festive season is a big deal here. Music and dancing is an integral part of how Congolese celebrate the season. Last year, the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic prompted the government to impose tough restrictions, which prevented many people from celebrating Christmas in their traditional way. But this year, it's different. There won't be a lockdown, just a curfew and the compulsory wearing of masks.
In 2020, it was difficult for us to celebrate Christmas because the government imposed a lockdown. But this year, the restrictions have been eased. We will wear our masks when we are out celebrating. Everyone should know that COVID-19 exists.
The government has urged the public to maintain social distancing and respect a curfew imposed to curb the spread of COVID-19. That comes on the heels of a recent announcement by the Health Ministry about the circulation of the Omicron variant across the country. For many Congolese, the news of the fast-spreading variant will not deter them from going out to spread the Christmas cheer.
So whether it's Omicron or whether it's something else, now I'm talking like quinoa, we're all going to die for something. So we're going to celebrate with or without precaution.
The DRC has recorded more than 67,000 COVID-19 cases and over 1,100 deaths since last year. The pandemic has spread to all the 26 provinces across the country. A lot of misinformation about the pandemic has led to widespread skepticism about COVID vaccines. But what's without doubt is that thousands of Congolese citizens are preparing to put on their dancing shoes and celebrate this year's festive season. Chris Chamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
When the United Kingdom put Southern African countries onto a troubled red list due to the scientific identification of Omicron, the impact was immediate and devastating to the tourism sector. All the 11 countries were removed from the list this week. As Angelo Coppola reports, the Southern African nations hit hard by this travel ban are not just counting losses, but also considering what to do about the economic damage.
According to the Tourism Business Council, the tourism sector lost $62.5 million in bookings alone in the first 48 hours following the ban. It doesn't end there.
The challenge that we sit with now is that we still have the EU, still banning South Africa. The likes of Germany are important, France is important for tourism, the Netherlands, and many other countries within the European Union. If you look at the European Union itself, 686,000 tourists come from the European Union. We still have the US that still have banned us. Luckily, we just got the news that Canada has lifted the ban on South Africa.
The hospitality sector was hard hit by that red listing.
If we take our December period, we lost about 45% of our business. Some of it has clawed back in fits and starts. And around about 65% of our January and February businesses. That's the short-term losses that were ring-fenced in terms of the international travel.
There's been some discussion about seeking compensation from the UK authorities for imposing that latest red listing.
So one of the things about our continent, about Africa, is how willing and how forgiving we are. We really shouldn't be. We should be as bold as to say we will sue them for loss compensation. We will try and get them to compensate us for the damage that is done. Because remember, it didn't just do financial damage, but it also had a reputational damage.
Industry players don't see any value in pursuing that option.
The issue of compensation takes years, and we can't wait for years to operate and going to courts and so forth and so on. For us, is let's restore trust. Let's make sure that we work together. Let's put the red listing issues aside into the history books.
I think there should be some consequences, but I think you've got 5 chances of getting a settlement, I think, on this. This is a worldwide problem that we've got to deal with. And I think we're not going to get in. That doesn't make sense. Let's rather just try and rebuild and learn from the mistakes of doing knee-jerk reactions.
It's not about whether the tourists are back in the country or not. It's about the long-term damage that's been done to those tourism establishments and when they're going to recover and contribute meaningfully to the South African GDP. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
The Omicron travel bans also impacted Nigeria's aviation industry, which was already struggling. The Nigerian government has threatened reciprocal actions. CGTN's Deji Bademosi has more on that story.
Nigeria's aviation industry was already facing a very difficult struggle recovering from the prolonged stoppage of aviation activities following the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic last year, when the flight restriction over the Omicron variant was suddenly imposed on the country. Industry players say they didn't see the flight ban coming and that it has now compounded their situation.
We never expected that, because if you look at the global indices on how this COVID-19 is being tackled, Nigeria has done so wonderfully well as a travel agent. We have sold tickets to those destinations because people are already willing to travel. They have been indoor, they have been in Nigeria for so long, and recently we started seeing change. We started seeing people coming to us to purchase their ticket. A lot of people.
Even though the United Kingdom has now rescinded its flight ban, that of Canada and Saudi Arabia are still in place. Canada is a popular destination for Nigerians seeking to study abroad, while Saudi Arabia is popular for Nigerian Muslim pilgrims. With the flight ban of both countries still in place, the number of travelers from Nigeria has significantly gone down.
We have students that are supposed to resume this coming January, about how many days to go. And with the travel ban from the other 3 countries, they couldn't go. And apart from that, a lot of people wish to celebrate the Christmas outside in some of these countries. They have made preparation, they have booked their hotel, they have made payment, they have bought their ticket. But now with Nigeria on the red list, it means they cannot go to these places. And that seriously had a negative effect on our businesses, because some of us couldn't pay our office rent. Some of us, we have issue with our clients when it comes to refunds of tickets.
The Nigerian government says it is hoping to resolve the issue diplomatically, but it has also warned that it could be compelled to take a reciprocal action by banning flights from the countries involved. Some experts, though, warn that may not be the right move.
My personal calculation is that we will lose a lot because most of the earnings we get in aviation is from the foreign airline. Except they want to tell us they are not making money. And that's why I said that for the past 20 years now, we have to find out how much money we are making out of the commercial agreement. By my calculation, it cannot be less than $40 million in a year.
The government is still pursuing the diplomatic option to resolve the standoff. It has not said how far talks have gone and if there's any resolution in sight. But for as long as the travel ban remains, the aviation industry will continue to bear the brunt. Deji Bademosi, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Britain has reported a surge in Omicron cases as London's mayor declares a major incident to help the city's hospitals cope. The number of Omicron cases recorded across the country hit almost 25,000 on Friday. That's more than 10,000 cases from a day earlier. Health officials warn this could be just the tip of the iceberg. Britain has been added to Germany's list of high-risk countries with tighter travel restrictions. France has cancelled the traditional New Year fireworks in Paris amid growing concerns over Omicron. Nearly 60,000 new cases were reported on Saturday. The country's health minister says Omicron accounts for up to 10% of new confirmed cases, and the Netherlands will go into lockdown over the Christmas period to try and stop an Omicron surge. Michael Vos reports from London.
The first all-night vaccination centres have opened in England. With a record 93,000 new daily cases, the rush is on to contain the highly contagious new Omicron variant. Almost half the population, though, have now had their third jab. Hospitals are reporting a rise in the number of patients in intensive care, some of who have been double vaccinated.
I don't think it's going to happen. I've been double jabbed as well. May and July I was jabbed. And they did say if I hadn't been vaccinated, I probably wouldn't be here.
Doctors at this hospital fear it's going to get much worse.
So all of the meetings that we've attended insofar as the network is concerned, where modelling is taking place, the message is clear that this looks like it's the calm before the storm.
There are reports the UK government is considering a short 2-week circuit breaker lockdown, though this could face stiff opposition from many in the ruling Conservative Party. There were long queues at the Eurostar railway station in London on Friday night as passengers tried to take the train to France before it closed its borders to people travelling from Britain. France is also seeing a surge in COVID cases, leaving its hospitals under pressure.
The Mulhouse Hospital ICU is currently at full capacity, as patients have been coming in for the last 20 days. 70% of the ICU patients are COVID-positive cases.
France has reopened large venues such as this velodrome for mass vaccinations and is now offering them to 5-year-olds. Germany has also started vaccinating everyone over the age of 5. The fear is that the situation is going to get much worse.
I too expect a massive fifth wave. I'm in close contact with my colleagues in England, both politically and scientifically. They say that what we are seeing there exceeds everything we have seen during the entire pandemic so far.
Back in Britain, the economy is starting to suffer with mounting pressure on the government to renew financial assistance to hospitality and other sectors.
You're watching Africa Live. Let's take a short break. Coming up, Sudan braces for new protests 3 years after revolution. Protests are expected across Sudan today to mark the third anniversary of mass demonstrations that ended President Omar al-Bashir's rule. Opposition activists said they were mobilizing thousands of supporters to demonstrate against General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. Meanwhile, the country's Sovereignty Council has suspended part of a 2020 peace deal with rebel groups in the east. The move follows a tribal protests against the deal known as the East Track Agreement. Groups like the Beja Central Council are demanding that the government revises the text of the deal, claiming that they are sidelined. In protest, they have closed the main port in the city of Port Sudan in the east of the country.
The fact that our people in eastern Sudan now agree on this decision to suspend the track, and also it is important that they talked about halad, a local custom in the customs and traditions of the tribes of eastern Sudan, and judges use it to adjudicate in various disputes and the solutions that led to the formation of a committee. This will contribute to resolving major issues.
Everyone should be fully aware that this East Track Agreement came with long struggles and has many gains in favor of Eastern Sudan. And we will not make a compromise by cancelling the track, but it is possible to review the items that stand in the way between us and our brothers who reject the track and must be modified.
There is no other solution except dialogue. We have all experienced it in Sudan, and in many cases that the gun or closure is the solution. But it has been proven before that it is not the solution.
Aid agencies are calling for more support from international donors to try and mitigate the devastation brought about by flooding in parts of South Sudan. In areas around Bentiu town in the north of the country, authorities say relentless flooding has left more than 90% of the population of the entire state homeless and their livelihoods washed away. CGTN's Patrick Oyet reports from Bentiu.
More people keep arriving in Bentiu town from villages overrun by floods. Their homes have been washed away. Crops are underwater and food is scarce here. Livestock have died in the floods. The few domestic animals that have survived are dying because of lack of what to eat. Aid agencies say they are overwhelmed and are asking for more support from international donors. The entire population of Unity State in the northern part of South Sudan now depends on food aid. Women, the elderly, and children are the most affected.
We are suffering. We have nothing now. We used to have farms in this place. We used to have enough food, but we are now surrounded by water. We only have little goods coming here by canoes.
Schools are also flooded. Children are now studying under a few trees that have not yet been submerged by water.
Our hope is that children have to continue with their study regardless of the situation that they are in. Even though if they are in the middle of this crisis, children have to go to school. They have to have access to continue with their learning. Whether they are in middle of the water or the crisis, they have to continue with their study.
The UN says more than 2 million people may not have access to basic health services. 200,000 women and children already acutely malnourished will be at further risk. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Bentiu, South Sudan.
Ethiopia's Ministry of Communication has responded to the UN's decision to probe allegations of war crimes in the country. It says it will not cooperate with the designated team. CGTN's Gurum Chala has more on the Ethiopian government's reaction and the current situation at the front lines in the north of the country.
The Ethiopian government has a few hours ago released a strong statement against the decisions made by the UN Human Rights Council. It reads, just the point, this action by some in the council is an attempt to find a way, an alternative way of meddling into internal affairs of the country and will not serve any purpose except exacerbating the situation on the ground. It reads, Richard, Ethiopia from the onset was rejecting this meeting, calling it unnecessary because it was working its own Human Rights Commission, which was very credible, by the way, was jointly working with the UN and had published a report which was accepted by many member states before, and that was expected to be implemented. However, now the decision was made. As you remember, so many African states were not even happy of the organization of this meeting itself, and no African state voted for that. And this statement continues saying that Ethiopia will not cooperate with the team that was formed as it was imposed on it. Its human rights situation is an internal affair. The international community is expected to work with us. Ethiopia is unhappy and it will not cooperate, according to the statement.
We generally take it that the UN Human Rights Council is attempting to meddle in the internal affairs of the sovereign state. This meeting was used by nations that want to use this opportunity to attack Ethiopia. Let us be clear, Ethiopia will not accept the outcomes of this meeting. We are in fact disappointed by the decisions made, because it has abandoned the positive efforts exerted by this government. And we should be honest, this decision will shadow any other future engagement we shall have with the UN body. The other main thing is that we have noticed which nations are our true friends and which others are our foes, and would like to take advantage of our challenges.
Unfortunately, war continues in the north between the Ethiopian National Defense Force, other armed force under the Prime Minister's leadership, who was there a few days back and now is in Turkey for the Turkey-Africa meeting. And that mission in the north is continuing. The TPLF force are also fighting against the government force, but they are being pushed further away by the day. Last night we have heard the breaking news, the last stronghold called Waldia, which is located in the border town, in the border between the Amhara and the Tigray regional state, is now a strategic location where war is intensified. In the next few hours, the NDF is saying that they will finish the job of taking the forces of the Tigray away from the Amhara regional state. They have already done that job of freeing lands of the Afar regional state. So war has now come to narrow places in the Amhara and Tigray regional state border towns. We should report that airstrikes have continued. The TPLF is saying civilians have been affected. The government is saying that strategic military locations were the ones being targeted, and it was a successful mission. So generally speaking, war is in continuation in the north.
Mali's Foreign Affairs Ministry has said Chad plans to deploy 1,000 additional soldiers to Mali to reinforce its troops battling insurgents there as France withdraws its military presence in Africa's Sahel region. Chadian soldiers make up nearly 1,400 of the United Nations' 13,000 troop peacekeeping force in north and central Mali. French troops are leaving Mali's Timbuktu. Earlier, they pulled out of the Kidal and Tessal bases in the north. Meanwhile, President Emmanuel Macron has cancelled a 2-day trip to visit French troops in Mali. It was set to begin on Monday, but has been shelved as he deals with France's deteriorating COVID-19 situation. A security analyst in Bamako says the gains made in the war against jihadists risk being lost once the French forces leave.
Without French troops, we would no longer be talking about Mali today. However, what should be done? In my opinion, Mali should pull itself together so that the whole analysis of the situation can be done in good conditions and Mali can come out of it well. At the time when the United States wanted to step up Africa Command, which is the command of American troops in Africa, I had envisaged that we would break this deadlock by structuring the zones of Mali into 4 defense zones, and that each zone would be directed by an international force. We could give each of these zones to France, another to the United States, Russia or China. Then it would be up to each of these great powers to take care of not only of the security, but also of the development and viability of these regions.
Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has held a series of meetings with various African leaders. He did this on the sidelines of the just concluded 3rd Turkey-Africa Cooperation Summit in Istanbul. In attendance were 16 heads of African states and over 100 ministers. Turkey says the country will walk alongside African friends on the road to development. The summit is aimed at expanding Turkey's diplomatic and trade ties with the African continent. You're watching Africa Live. Coming up in business news. Relatives of Ethiopian Airlines 737 MAX crash victims want Boeing executives prosecuted. And Ghana introduces new taxes on all electronic money transactions.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climate and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Aden, Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia,
Tanzania. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Families of those who died when a new Boeing 737 MAX aircraft operated by Ethiopian Airlines crashed shortly after takeoff in March 2019 have filed a legal motion against the U.S. government. They accuse the Justice Department of secretly drawing up a deferred prosecution agreement, which then enabled Boeing to get immunity from criminal prosecution. Ethiopian Airlines Flight 8302 crashed minutes after takeoff from Bole International Airport. That was the second crash involving a 737 MAX aircraft. Faulty flight control software was later found to have triggered both accidents, in which 346 people died. To date, just one person has been indicted on criminal charges. That's the former chief technical pilot, Mark Faulkner. He stands accused of defrauding the U.S. civil aviation regulator, the FAA, by deliberately withholding information about the flight control software known as MCAS. Ghana has introduced a 1.75% levy on electronic transactions. That levy comes into effect on the 1st of February next year. It covers mobile money payments, bank transfers, merchant payments, and inward remittances. Peninah Karibe Dini Osman reports from Accra.
Salome Ayete has been a mobile money vendor for 11 years. It's her only source of livelihood. She says the government's new tax on mobile money and all electronic transactions could threaten her source of income.
It will not help us because people already, they are complaining that if they bring that and they will not do mobile money again. The business will collapse and it will affect us.
The government is introducing a 1.75% tax on mobile money payments and electronic bank transfers called e-levy to shore up revenue generation. Ghana has more than 42 million mobile money accounts, according to the government's data. But like Ayete, many Ghanaians are against it.
When you're going to send money to someone, we see the charges to be high already. And we complain, even with the normal one. So them adding more to it, it's going to be complicated.
When you collect a tax and you don't make good use of it, I don't see why the tax should be collected. Go to the interland. People are suffering.
Ghana's central bank says there are more than 19 million active mobile money accounts driving the digital financial services industry. The government says the e-levy is part of strategies to widen the country's tax net. It believes revenue generated from the levy will enhance financial inclusion and protect the vulnerable. The government says part of the money raised from the e-levy will be used to support entrepreneurship, youth employment, digital and road infrastructure. But analysts fear these additional taxes could overburden citizens and also slow down the cashless drive in Ghana. They think the tax should be lowered.
What has happened in other countries is that when these things have happened, you find out that people have gone back to cash. And then government has not been able to raise the revenue, and then jobs have been lost, when even they've gone back and reduce it, the uptake has not gone back to what it was before then. We thought that something between 0.25 and 0.5 would have been a good one.
Salome Ayete agrees. She believes a downward adjustment of the tax will help prevent her business from collapsing. Ridwan Karim Dini Osman, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
The South African utility Eskom has reported its first significant half-year profit for the first time since 2017. It reported $569.4 million in net earnings in the 6 months to end September. President Cyril Ramaphosa's government has been trying to restore Eskom to profitability and improve performance and uptime in its vast fleet of ailing coal-fired power stations. Angela Kupler has the details from Johannesburg.
The jump in profits is good news, and projections for the full year are also upbeat.
Effectively, your loss, obviously 15% tariff increase plus that 8% volume growth has come through in the numbers, together with, as I mentioned, Eskom's cost control focus of extracting 20 billion target out of our cost base. Those two factors contribute significantly to the reduction in the loss from your 18.9 billion to your forecasted 9 billion loss.
The debt pile has been reduced from 463.7 billion rand to 392.1 billion rand, but there's still the outstanding municipal debt.
Now sitting with municipal debt at 42.5 billion, it is unsustainable. Eskom can no longer borrow money at 9.85% interest and then keep on funding defaulting municipalities. We really need a structural solution to this challenge. We are engaged with National Treasury on this, and I'm hopeful that early in the new year we will continue our engagements and be able to find a solution.
The utility has made progress in unbundling its corporate structure into 3 units: generation, transmission and distribution. But questions around the debt and regional agreements remain.
The most significant portion of the debt would then follow generation, and then the remaining would go to transmission and distribution. So you would expect that the largest portion of that 392 billion rand to go to generation.
We are engaging with participants in the SAPP to cede their current agreements with Eskom to the transmission company, because the transmission company is going to be the entity that is going to be responsible for international trading.
The utility is also going to free up some of its extensive land holdings via auctions to assist independent power producers. De Ruyter says it's not a large revenue generator.
It is more intended to ease the immediate bottleneck that exists in terms of grid capacity to allow new generation plant to be brought into operation at the earliest opportunity.
The company is still in dire straits because of its debt burden, and it's unlikely to be able to dig itself out of that hole anytime soon. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
The 18th edition of the world's 500 most influential brands list, compiled by World Brand Lab, was released on the 7th of December in New York. This year, China surpassed the UK and continues to hold 4th place, with 44 of its brands making the final cut. The world's 500 most influential brands list, which has been published annually for the past 18 years, covers 47 industries this year. With its excellent market performance and strong business growth, Google tops the list, pushing Amazon into second place due to its lower than expected results during the pandemic. Microsoft was ranked 3rd. There are a number of Chinese brands on the rise, including the construction machinery manufacturer Suzhou Construction Machinery Group, or XCMG. The 70-year-old firm exports its machinery to over 187 countries and regions worldwide.
In 2021, we built 21 residence water cellars and 20 water cellars for schools in African countries as part of our social responsibility. We also brought the engineering machinery into some campus so that the children in the schools can gain some knowledge on engineering manufacturing, stimulate their interest in the manufacturing industry. Through our efforts on the building of global brand, Zhukong will love to contribute more to our homeland.
This is Africa Live. Coming up in sports.